Good afternoon everyone, Paxton, and how the hell did we even know that Creeper sleeps at all? In general, let's disassemble it. And really, where did we even get that Creeper sleeps for 23 years and only hunts at 11 o'clock p.m.? After all, I will surprise you that none of the films say a word about this at all. But where did this mistake come from? And here are two reasons that we know for sure is that every 23 spring for 20. And 3 days it eats, but no one tells us that all the other days for 23 years it sleeps. So why did we decide that it was sleeping? We were mistakenly prompted by the ending of 2 movies, when Creeper supposedly ran out of time and kind of fell asleep.
It isn't dead, its time ran out.
And after that we believe that he is always after 23 days of his feeding. That's how he falls asleep, but in fact the whole fun is that at the end of 2 films Creeper actually dies, and he won't be reborn even after 23 years and never turned out to be. That my theory that the Creeper can only be killed with his own weapon, in fact, turned out to be true, and I was introduced to this already in the 3rd film, where after the ugly grandmother saw a vision, she asked the sheriff,
"Just tell me one thing you took with you what will destroy him."
That is, this is something specific, some kind of object. And also at the end of the 3rd film we see how the Swift grandmothers managed to kill the severed hand of the Creeper. And even after 23 years in the ground it was alive and moving. But at the end of the film it became almost white and crumbled at the Creeper in his hands. That is, Grandma understood the secret of Creeper and the fact that he can only be killed with his own weapon. The only question is, where did she get it? Unfortunately, this question is open. We don't know exactly what or how Grandma was able to get his arm dead, but it's likely that while Creeper was seriously injured, she was able to get something out of the truck, namely this big nail, and it worked, since it's one of his weapons along the way. And yes, if suddenly there are those who don't understand why in the 2nd film the Creeper kind of fell asleep or died, and in the 3rd he's kind of alive again. So the events of 3 films take place between the 1st and 2, and it is in 3 films that there are answers to all those questions. So Grandma learned that a Creeper could be killed with his own weapon, and she demonstrated it to him. And you also need to remember the moment when the sheriff says that his whole history is in his truck. And it's not for nothing either. And it's not for nothing that Creeper came back for the truck. The fact is that, in his truck, Creeper just and carries all his weapons, and after, in the 3rd film, Grandmother learned how to kill him, we see that in the next, that is, in the 2nd film, which continues being 3, there is no truck. Because he thought that this weapon was too weak for someone to kill him with its help, and as we remember in the 2nd film at the very beginning of the Creeper lost his knife, and it was this knife that Farmer Taggart made the tip of his harpoon. And look at how we're made to emphasize this, and how Creeper himself looks at this harpoon. Here it is clearly visible in his facial expression that the jokes are over, and that Creeper's face is as serious as possible.
Oh, some kind of bad situation is spiraling, I feel in.
Unlike all the previous events in the movie where he was killing, but still seemed to be having fun and getting high from the last day of his feeding. And, as we remember, in the end, Farmer Taggart stabbed Creeper with just the same tip as his skin, and thereby he really killed the monster, and he even says that.
"I think the creature is dead."
But wait, you'll say he just went back to hibernation and the girl talked about it. But no, she's not saying he's asleep. She said it was just that his time was up, but she doesn't say a word that he went into hibernation. That's all. We figured it out ourselves. And now let's remember other points. Is there a Creeper at 2300 who eats how he manages to carve wood and make, for example, this table like him? He sang about nailing all the bodies to the ceiling and no one discovered it for a bunch of years. I lead to the fact that if he hasn't eaten for 23 years, then will he have time to do his 23 and bulk feeding? Anything else? I think he sleeps like a normal person, except he only eats at 11 o'clock p.m. at 23, and the rest of the time he just hides somewhere and does all his creative shit. Confirmation of this is also one fact from the comic book about Jeepers to Creepers. All this time I thought he was a mistake in issue 4 of the comic We. Let's say that Piper woke up in 1962. Although taking into account the cycles of 23 years and taking into account the fact that the events of film 1 take place in 99, then in 62, Creeper should have been sleeping soundly and the next year of activity was 53. But what if it's not a mistake at all and it's the opposite, consciously? A reference to the fact that Creeper hasn't slept for 23 years and he simply hasn't eaten for 23 years, but nevertheless, he makes his houses hurt, because Creeper has more than one such place to make his weapons and engage in other creativity. So what we've come to is that no one actually ever told us about the Creeper going into hibernation. We already figured it out ourselves, based on the words of a girl from 2 movies who actually didn't say anything like that. That is, we thought it wrong. She didn't say that he fell asleep. She said what he was. Time also came out for all these years. The phrase that every 23 spring for 23 days it eats. And we again mistakenly thought that all the rest of the time it was then probably sleeping. Well, damn, this completely breaks the logic that if it were so, then in 23 years and his truck would have been found and the house was. You also found Ole and all his lair and his peacefully sleeping person too. A bunch of times I would have found it. They would have given some laboratory to study, and in issue 4 of the comic book we are shown the moment when in 1962 Creeper was simply sleeping deep in some old mine, but here he is found by miners and he wakes up and his head during the time when he was sleeping was not closed, since it was closed at the end of the second movie. He just slept with his head open and he woke up and killed the miners. That is, he definitely hasn't slept for 23 years, he just hasn't eaten for 23 years. And when does he eat? He's just renewing those organs of his that have failed in 23 years of dieting. And now about the ending of 2 movies and the whole trilogy, what do we see? We see that Creeper was stabbed with his own weapon. And as a result, his face was covered by his hood. And let the girl say his time is up. This again doesn't mean that he has fallen into hibernation, especially since she doesn't know for sure, she just thinks so. But what I see personally is that in reality Creeper just died and Farmer Tagar was right.
I think the thing is dead.
And after 23 years nothing will happen. That's why they decided not to continue the trilogy, but made a completely separate film, in which the trilogy is just films and about it directly. And the opening scene where we see that same harpoon is just a radio transmission to show it in trailers and lure people into theaters. But in fact, Creeper didn't sleep for 23 years and he just didn't eat, but he continued to do all kinds of nonsense like carving wood or creating houses, the panes of which Creeper had more than 1 or even 2, and at the end of 2 films and trilogy. In general, we see nothing but the death of the Creeper and the logical conclusion of the story. And the question that the Creeper can wake up is just interesting, supposedly. The situation that Among Us fans simply skillfully prolongs the monster's life and forces us to still review films and build various theories about the monster of which we know under the name Jeepers Creepers, but Atrisha from the end of 3 films will just come to the farm of Farmer Taggart, will look at the crucified mummy Creeper, will take a picture of it as a memory, after which she will go to her brother's grave, say that the creature is still dead, and leave a photo of the dead Creeper on the tombstone of the hole. I sincerely hope you loved the video. Please subscribe to my channel, like the video, and leave plenty of comments to boost its visibility on YouTube. This has been Poexton with you.